All right, welcome. This video is going to cover the end-to-end anastomosis of blood vessels, essentially how to bring them together in this fashion using a single arm suture. There's some sutures out there that have needles on both ends, in which case it's a bit of a different technique because you can have two people working at the same time and you don't have to backhand your suture. Essentially, if we're going to do a single arm, we're going to have to go all the way around the blood vessel, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And for this technique, I'm going to choose a monofilament that is not absorbable. In a 7.0, you can use small, basically anything that's small, in a monofilament, so it slides a little bit easier, and that's going to allow us to approximate this blood vessel without causing too much trauma, as opposed to a multifilament. These braids, they're going to create too much friction. So that's that. These are the other tools that I have to do this anastomosis. I'm going to be using some debakis. You want something that is, the least traumatic as possible in the blood vessel. Some mosquitoes to hold the tail of the suture so it doesn't get lost. And I'm going to show you how to use these other instruments. You're going to be using your scissors. Here we got a marking pen in order for us to practice approximating these blood vessels at the right orientation, right? Because we don't want it to be like this. We want it to come nice and straight across. And for needle drivers, you can use regular or Castro Viejos. All right, for the first step here, I just want to mark it so I'm sure I'm getting the right areas. Very importantly is here on the side, because we're going to start on this back wall, and I want to make sure that this comes together nice and evenly. So I'm going to make a line here so I know that whenever I cut it, it's in the proper orientations. I'm going to make another line in the middle. I'm going to make another line here on the side, right there. And here for the back wall, I'm going to make another one. Okay, that should be good. Alright, so here's really the purpose of making these lines. Now, whenever you're clamping these two blood vessels, you kind of want them to touch, but you don't want them, you don't want too much tension on them. So I think that should be good for now. Whenever you load the needle on a Castro Viejo with a little bit of a curve, this curve has to point away from the tip of the needle. So something like this, okay? Alright, starting with the technique here, you have two approaches. You can either go from the outside or the inside of this side, or you can start off over here. It depends on whether or not you want to do a front hand on this back wall here at the bottom, because essentially if you're doing a front hand, like a regular throw on the bottom side of the blood vessel, you're going to have to go backhand on the top side and vice versa. And I think for this back half, it is a little bit easier to do front hand, to pass it like how it's loaded up on the needle. If you want to do that on this side, on this one first. So that's what I'm going to do in this video, but you can go on both ends theoretically. It just depends on what technique you want to use. So I'm going to create a little bit of traction. I'm going to go right at the line here, okay? Trying to be close. Right there, right? After I do this first pass, I'm gonna go ahead and protect my needle. That way it doesn't stab anybody. Oh, there you go. That's locked. I'm gonna go ahead and feed my suture through, but before that, I wanna make sure I get my tail end. So I'm gonna run it through. I find my tail end, and then I'm gonna use some mosquitoes to go ahead and clamp that down like so, and I'm going to use these pegs over here to secure this thing in place so it doesn't move around. I can even use my rubber bands there to make sure it doesn't move anywhere. And that's naturally going to leave a tail here, and it creates traction, so whenever I pull in the suture, there's tension along the blood vessel, so I can bring these two edges nice and close together. So let me go ahead and zoom in again and continue with the technique. This next throw here is going to be backhanded, and I'm going to go on the inside of this blood vessel through the back wall, okay? So let me go ahead and hold it like a pencil, like so. Let me reload there. Okay. Here's a technique that I've seen. You kind of use your debakis to create traction, and I'm gonna go right through the purple line right there. Alright, beautiful. Now I'm gonna hold it front hand, so regular throw, and I'm gonna make sure I feed my suture all the way through. So now that I'm holding it front hand, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna use a little bit of traction here, and I'm gonna start running it. I need to be behind the suture line, like so, and I just need to go right there. The next throw is going to be backhanded, so I'm going to go ahead and grab, and here's the technique. I'm going to use the Bakey forceps to hold on to the mid shaft of the needle, and then I'm going to hold it backhand. I'm going to feed my suture through, and that's going to create a nice loop there. I'm going to bring those two edges together. I'm going to use some traction here to feed it on the other side of the wall. The beginning is always the trickiest part, and also the trickiest part comes at the apex here. So this next throw is going to be front-handed. So let me go ahead and load it up there. Okay. So I'm going to use that to kind of scoop it up underneath, and I'm not going to go through here like that. I'm going to go behind the suture line, right? Behind everything, and I'm going to pierce the inside of this blood vessel. Okay. I'm going to feed it through. Now I can do front-handed on this other wall. What I just did there is probably not a good technique because I grabbed the suture with the Bakey forceps. You want to try to avoid that at all costs because it can cause trauma to the suture line. So maybe something like this. I know it can be dangerous to handle needles. You know, there's always precautions for blood-borne pathogens, but you just gotta be careful. And now I'm in front of the suture line, and I'm gonna kind of move this wall to the side there like that. You see that? And then I'm gonna pierce very close to the incision on the inside of the blood vessel. Okay. So I'm just gonna feed it and make sure everything looks good to me. Right? Open up the both ends. Alright, so now that I did that, I don't necessarily need to be behind the suture line because I see my sutures right there, right? So at this point, I'm just gonna run it front hand style, and I'm gonna meet you once I get to the apex here. Alright, so here's where it starts to get a little bit tricky here in the curvature of the blood vessel. In this case, it's Penrose tubing, right? But same idea. Let me recenter that. So now it's going to be a front hand on the right side, and I'm going to do a backhand on the left side in order to get the proper angle that I need. So I'm going to use some traction here with my Bakeys, trying to be careful not to grab too hard on the blood vessel. And then I'll go right through. Reload. Put some traction there, some tension. So you can see we're very close to the apex. Alright, so now backhand. kind of tricky with the suture. Make sure you're not crossing over. Okay, so now the idea is that I want to go through both sides of the purple, right? So I'm going to do a throw here and then come out on the other side, backhanded. Reload, backhanded, because we're going to come out on the inside of this the other blood vessel. I accidentally crossed there, so just kind of, no worries, just pull it right back. Okay, so you always have to be very mindful of where you are. In this case, we're on the inside of the left one, so that means we need to go on the inside of the right one, and I'm gonna do so in this approach. So maybe put some traction there. Oh, maybe front hand will be better, like so. Move that around so I can load it backhanded. Good. Alright. So now the pattern as before, you know, the tricky part is here. Now is just as simple as just backhanded passes and come out straight across on the other side. It is going to be a little bit difficult to do it in one throw, so I think on this side I'm going to have to do it in 2 throws. So always being mindful, I don't want to cross. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward this and see you at the end of the anastomosis. Alright, so I'm nearing the end of this anastomosis. I'm going to take one more bite so I can be right across from the apex here. I hope you can appreciate that and see that on camera. So I'm going to have some traction. There you go. They want to cooperate with me. Alright, so now that that's done, you know, it's same as before. I can either do hand stitch, hand ties, or I could do some instrument ties. In this case, I think I'm going to do some instrument ties because the tail seems rather short. So I'm going to start with surgeon's knot. I'm going to cross over, and I'm going to pull along the tension, so front and back instead of side to side. That's going to be more efficient in the long run. Always grabbing the tail. And I'm going to do quite a few throws here because I don't want this to come apart. I want to create as much friction as possible. So I'm going to do one more. Alright, now we're going to leave a bit of a tail. You know, again, a pinky is a centimeter, so maybe half of a centimeter, somewhere around here. Just in case if it does come apart, at least there's some slack there for it to not come apart too easily. Okay, here's the end result. It's sort of lined up pretty good, not gonna lie. The tricky part here is maintaining constant tension throughout. You know, otherwise you're gonna get these loose knots like I have there. So you have someone helping you out, you know, making sure that the tension is always there as they're pulling. That's going to help tremendously with the end result. But here's a technique. This is one way to do a running, you know, end-to-end anastomosis. Again, with a single arm suture in real life, I think more efficient is going to be a double arm. So it's going to be needles on both ends of the suture, and it just allows someone to work on the back end as someone's working on the other half and get it done faster. Well, anyways, thank you for watching my video. I really hope this was helpful.